Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. So today is about shooting down helicopters. Question from you guys is, you should do a video on how to shoot down helicopters. I'm presuming that you guys mean from aeroplanes. I can't seem to figure it out and there is not much info out there. So let's have a look at the theory and then we'll go and have a look at the practical difficulties of doing this. So, shooting down helicopters from an aeroplane. The first thing is to note that our aeroplane is just not very well optimized for shooting down helicopters. Our F-15 in this case, and it's not just the F-15, it's any of the kind of fighter airplanes that I think you guys probably mean for this video, are designed for shooting down other fast jets and bombers and whatnot. And they're simply not good at helicopters. Now, let's look at the first reason. The first reason is a radar cross-section. For the helicopters, I've chosen the Gazelle because I wanted to take it to its absolute most extreme. The smaller and the faster and the cooler, as in temperature, the helicopter, the harder it is for our aeroplane to detect it and shoot it down. And this is, I think, the smallest, the coolest, and the most maneuverable that we have in DCS, so it's going to make it extra difficult. So the first thing, if we look at radar cross-section, that is the size of, our radar reflection. And if we go right from the front here, we can see the difference between the kind of silhouette of a Gazelle there and a typical size fighter, an F-15. The F-15 silhouette is several times larger, and even if we go from the side, and you can see even with the Gazelle in front there, it is several times smaller in terms of kind of cross-section shadow there. So the first thing is we're looking for a much smaller aircraft in terms of using our radar for BVR acquisition. And sticking with radar acquisition, the next problem is that the helicopter is very slow. Our pulse Doppler radar is exactly that. It's looking for things that are moving fast in comparison to its surroundings. So when we're looking for helicopters, the helicopter is generally going to be flying low, closer to the ground. The F-15 or the fighter is going to be generally flying up high. So we're going to be doing a look down, shoot down type acquisition for our radar. Now, that's fine. Due to the horned ability of our F-15 radar, we have the ability to look down at the ground and determine what is an aircraft and what is the ground. And the way that it does that is with its pulse Doppler filtering ability. It can filter out, if we're looking at an aeroplane moving across the ground, we can tell that the aeroplane is moving several hundred miles per hour difference in terms of movement than the ground. And that allows us to easily filter out that fighter jet that we're tracking in our look down acquisition. Now the problem with the Gazelle here, the Gazelle is not going to be flying at several hundred miles an hour in comparison to the ground that it's shadowed against, bearing in mind that we are doing look down acquisition. It's going to be flying, well, where's that guy? What's that? 40 knots, 50 knots, 60 knots? Much slower in comparison to the ground. So if we imagine that we are the radar in the F-15 now and we're looking down at that dude there, so we're sending a load of radiation out along our B sweep and it's all coming back to us, it's all bouncing off the ground and the trees and stuff, and it's all coming back to us, and the only difference of that radiation bouncing off the actual chopper is it's moving due to pulse Doppler shift about 40 knots different. That's very small margin to be able to differentiate that chopper as compared to the background trees and whatnot, bearing in mind that there are all sorts of other complications, including the fact that we are moving several hundred miles an hour in our F-15. Now, if that helicopter was moving at 500 knots instead of 50 knots, it would be much easier to tell that that is a helicopter and not a tree. Much easier than if it's actually moving whatever it is, about 50 knots. See what I mean? And so that's one complication, along with the size of the radar cross-section that we're going to be facing with trying to pick these guys up on our radar. So what that means is the radar acquisition, the range, what we'll do is we'll do a comparison. We'll do a fighter jet at 600 feet, trying to find a fighter jet down there at 300 knots, and then we'll try and pick up these helicopters at the same altitude of 600 feet down at 50, 60 knots, whatever they're doing at the moment. What we'll find is the fighter jet we can probably see about 30 or 40 miles away, and the helicopters we can probably see about 5 to 10 miles away. So it's a massive differential in range of detection. As well as being able to actually see them on the radar, to actually be able to see enough of them to be able to acquire a radar track is even more difficult. So even if we see this guy at 10 miles, actually being able to lay a radar track on him is going to be, you know, it will have to probably wait till 5 miles or something like that. Again, it will depend on helicopter aspect and stuff like that, roughly the same as it will depend on tracking the fighter. So that's the radar acquisition. What about actually firing weapons at the guy? So we've got radar guided missiles. In this case, we're going to have Fox 3 type missiles, and the Fox 3 type missiles, possibly also the Fox 1 type missiles, are going to struggle. They are simply not optimized to shoot at a helicopter. They are optimized to shoot at something that is moving several hundred, maybe even above 1,000 miles per hour, whereas this helicopter is never going to move above, realistically, you know, 50, 100 knots, something like that. And in fact, the slower this helicopter is going to go, the better chance it stands of beating an AMRAAM or our radar-guided missile, because it's simply not programmed / optimized to shoot at a smooth moving target. So what we'll probably see is I'll shoot my AMRAAM at whatever, 5 miles, whatever I can get a track at, and it just misses this guy. It just can't figure it out. So then we'll move to our heat seekers, and we've got a bit of a problem with our heat seekers as well. Now we can get an IR contrast lock on this guy, and we can fire at him, and we can hit him. But again, the chances of hitting are much lower than firing at, you know, a non-aggressively moving fighter jet, simply because his IR contrast is much lower as compared to a fighter jet, and as well as that, the differential between his countermeasures, assuming that he's got flares, I think these guys have flares, I think that's on the side there, we can see if I can zoom in. His flares, the differential between the temperature of those flares and our turbine exit there is much higher than the differential between the flares and you know, a fighter jet, a big jet engine like an F-15 or something. Therefore, it's going to be much easier for that helicopter to fool us in terms of flares as well as its basic IR contrast signature. So again, it'll be a 50-50 whether we can actually hit them with IR missiles, and that leaves us just with the guns. They are vulnerable to the guns. No amount of going slow or flaring will stop me gunning them, and so gunning these guys is usually the best way. Again, remember that the bigger and the slower the helicopter, the easier it is to shoot down. So if we're talking about Mi-26s, I think the big ones are, correct me if I'm wrong, then they're much slower to maneuver, they're producing more heat with their bigger, more powerful engines, they're bigger radar cross-sections, so we'll have a much better chance at shooting one of them than something small. But we like to take it to the extreme to show how difficult it can be. So step one, we'll jump in our F-15 and we're going to fly towards this island. We're on a big island, if I can, there we go. We're a big island at the moment. It's covered in helicopters. I don't know why someone's crashed there, but they have. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. And as well as a bunch of patrolling gazelles, there's also an F-15, and we're going to show that we're going to pick the F-15 up much quicker than we pick the gazelles up. Okay, in we go. AIM 120C selected, radar on, set the radar up, got Nails F-15, so we've got an F-15 on the nose somewhere. We can't see him yet, but I suspect we will see him pretty soon. There he is. We can already see the F-15 at 30 plus miles, just like we thought we could. So that's that. Next, we're going to keep travelling in until we see the helicopters above the island. Bearing in mind the helicopters are the same altitude as the F-15, so they have no advantage or disadvantage in terms of altitude. The only difference is their radar cross-section and the fact they're moving 50 knots rather than, you know, kind of 300 knots. Like I said, the slower that aircraft goes, the harder it is for our pulse Doppler radar to differentiate them against the ground. Very easy to differentiate the big, fast F-15. In fact, a general tip is when you're going to an area where you know helicopters are, then you want to reduce your closure rate because you need much more time when trying to attack helicopters, I find, because we will only see them at the very last minute. So I'd reduce down to about 300 knots max. Now, it is true that if I went really low, I have to be a little bit careful what I say here because there are lots of different effects on a radar. But if I went lower than 600 knots, then I'm just going to pause that there. Then I would have a benefit because I would not be contrasting the helicopters with our radar against the background. So in that case, because I'm contrasting them against the sky, it would be much easier for my radar to find them if I was going low like that. But the reason I'm not going to do that is because realistically in your F-15, you're not going to be down there at 400 feet hunting for helicopters, it's much more likely you're going to be up here looking down. And so we're going to continue on this basis. But that is something to bear in mind. So it's relatively slow, assuming there's no SAM threat and stuff like that. And if you can go low in the helicopters and look up, it's going to be a little easier. Anyway, so that's so we're slowing down, 300 knots. Speed it up because I know it's going to take a while before we see it. There we go. There's our first helicopter. We've actually done quite well there. We've got him at a good 7 or 8 miles there. So what we're going to do next is, well, how do you determine it is a helicopter? And what we're going to do is we're going to lock him up. We're going to try and lock him up. Okay, we can't lock him up yet, so ignore that. You lock this guy up, and you can see this guy is doing 329 ground speed, I think that is. Either TAS or ground speed, probably ground speed. So we know that's an aeroplane. The helicopter's gone now because he's just out of the ability for us to see him. He may have turned a corner and gone. There he is again. Alright, we've got the helicopter now. Pause out because we might not get another chance. We can see this guy's moving at 105 knots ground speed, which is actually bloody fast for a helicopter. Maybe one of the reasons why we picked him up so soon, because he is moving so fast compared to the ground around him. And we've got him on cold aspect, which is good. We've got an STT on him. And obviously the reason we know he's a helicopter is because he's doing, 100 knots or so. An airplane is not going to be doing that slow unless it's a Christian Eagle or whatever it's called. So we've got a lock on him. We did quite well to do that. Next, we're going to fire a missile at him. Now note how decreased the range, the effective range of the missile is. This is a AIM-120C. Down here, it's got a range of probably, if I were to fire on the F-15, I would have a maximum RMAX of 10 miles, 12 miles, something like that. But note how our max, the maximum range that I can fire the missile at, is so low because of the helicopter, because of, well, this is probably not actually the guy's speed at all that makes any difference. It's because, I imagine, of his radar cross-section. We just can't get the firing, the attributes that are required in this lock for firing at RMAX until all the way down here, about 3 or 4 miles. So our maximum firing range, just due to the fact it is a helicopter and not a plane, is reduced probably 3 or 4-fold. So let's go. We're 5 miles currently. Try not to lose that lock. And we lost it. Bugger. He turned a corner. He did something that upset our radar. Here he is again. Now, sorry to keep pausing, but so you all know what notching is. Notching is even worse when he is cast as a backdrop against the ground. So if he notches us, i.e. goes side to side, which he's about to do now, then his speed as compared to the backdrop that our radar is seeing him against becomes 0. He's not moving towards us or away from us as compared to the backdrop of the sea here at any speed. There is no pulse Doppler shift and our radar will not be able to see him. So there's a good chance that we're going to lose our track here, but we'll just have to see. We may be close enough that we can essentially burn through that with pure power, but we'll see. So it's pretty much bang on notching now. We've still got him. Now we're going to lose him. Look, when it flashes it means we've lost him. So even at 3 or 4 miles, because he notched, then and our plane couldn't notch me, that F-15 there couldn't notch me that at, because it's just a bigger radar cross-section at that range. It could notch me about 10 miles or maybe 8 miles, but not this low. And you can see I've got my radar on bore sight here. I can't pick him up. The radar just can't burn through that. There's another guy there, look. I've got him. So let's pause there. What's his aspect? So he is hot now, and we've picked him up again at 2 miles. Well, by this time, it's pretty much too late. I guess I can have a pop at him. Let's have a go, shall we? Hammer him out. May or may not hit. Oh, yeah! Genuine surprise. So I actually did quite well there. What I've noticed is about 75% of those AMRAAMs just miss because of whatever reason. And because he was changing aspect there, I'm genuinely surprised that missile worked. But you saw the difficulties there. I mean, that was hard anyway. Doing that in combat becomes almost impossible when you've got, hostile aircraft around you, guns shooting you, stuff like that. So next we're going to try an IR missile. Now, to get the IR missile, I need to either be able to see the guy with my eyes, which I can't because it's so small, or get another radar lock, which is what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to go back to BVR first of all. See if I can see him on with our Doppler shift. Stand by. Let me know if you see a helicopter, because I can't. So, as ever, as according to the video I did on how to spot air targets, the easiest way of spotting him, if we're going to have to use our eyes, is to go as low as we can and contrast him, backdrop him against the sky. That's going to be the best way of doing this. So what we do is go for another run, and we'll go lower. And assuming he hasn't crashed or something or landed, we might be able to get him. It's just a high G turn, and in we go. And I'm going to come off the gas now. I'm going to slow down. There he is. Pew. Sidewinders. So we've immediately slaved our Sidewinder gimbal seek ahead to our radar lock, and it's picked him up immediately. You can hear the buzz. Obviously it has found the IR contrast lock, so we can fire now at a range of 0.9 miles. Now note the Sidewinder. The Sidewinder does have decent range against him. Now interestingly, the Sidewinder has more range, more R max than the AMRAAM did. So that shows how useless the radar missile is against this guy here. I know we hit him, but it was quite a rarity, to be honest. It shows how much better performance we've got in terms of an IR missile. So let's fire that and see what we get. We're well within our no escape. Fox 2. And there's a good chance we're going to miss. Yeah, and we missed there. And the reason we missed probably was because the flares fooled him. So we've got those flares there out at 5,000 degrees or whatever they burn at. We've got the tiny little turbine on that Gazelle there at a few hundred degrees, and just not much saturation of the fluid around it in terms of temperature. So very hard for us to hit. So IR missiles don't work. So let's instead have to go for guns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn out. I'm going to high G turn back in. And next time we'll go for guns. And that's probably our best bet generally for taking down a helicopter, to be honest. Or at least a manoeuvrable little brat like this. We're lucky on this plane we've got a big scattergun. Using a non-scattergun like a cannon on a flanker, very difficult to shoot down a helicopter like this. Scattergun is pretty easy. Trying to keep this guy padlocked. I think I see him. It's another video. I need to do a video on padlocking, I think. Oh, it's there. Oh my goodness. Silly supercat. Got that wrong, didn't I? Okay. Nice and slow. Did I get him? Ah! Son of a gun. Right, let's go round. Right, I'm going to keep it padlocked this time. No more Mr. Nice Guy. That's the thing, keeping something like that padlocked, it's just impossible. Look how small he is. And our closure rate's so high on these things, even if they're heading away. It's surprisingly difficult to... Oh, I've just lost him. There he is. Right, so let's keep that closure rate right down. Get on. How invincible is this guy? Get some! You're going down, sir. Right, that's it. So for taking down a little bugger like that, it's probably the best way. Now you have to be careful because some of those choppers have anti-aircraft weapons. They've like the Mistral missile. Now, there's another one. It's certainly not optimised for shooting at aeroplanes per se, but they can still shoot me down. So when I want to attack him, I want to be zooming in, zooming out. I don't really want to be hanging around like this against a Mistral. Luckily, these aren't Mistrals, so I don't have much to really worry about. Oh, he's shooting at me, bless him! Oh, that is cute. Haven't got an M61 though, have you? Boom. Right, that's it. Pretty sure that's the last guy. So, to summarise, very hard to track them on the radar for the reasons that we've talked about. They're low down, they're low radar cross-section, and they don't move very fast. Very hard for us to use a radar-guided weapon because our radar-guided weapons simply aren't optimised for shooting that guy there for the reasons we've just described and more. Shooting him at 10 miles or something is just pointless. The missile will just never track. IR missiles can track him, but he can easily evade them much, much more easily than a jet, plane can avoid them in terms of countermeasures. Often like this, against an aggressive small little bastard like this, just going in for guns is going to be easiest bet, but just be careful of Mistrals and anything else out there that's got a similar type weapon. Got nothing else to add. I hope I've answered the question, and I'll see you later.